Hi folks, I'm Ty. I'm here to talk to you today about incident response. As we've heard, Dave even said it, and I was glad he did. On-call is hard. It's really hard. As you can tell from the title of the talk, I used to be an EMT. I worked for a 911 service on an ambulance. I've worked private EMS in emergency rooms and for search and rescue. Later in my career, I was a software developer, worked on SRE teams, internal tooling teams for large companies and small to medium companies as well. So I want to acknowledge first off that on-call is really hard. The title of my talk in no way is intended to tell you that sitting in an office doing this is easier. Your brain doesn't know the difference. Your actual limbic system does not know the difference when you were woken up at 3 a.m. to your terrible PagerDuty ringtone than it does to, say, a siren or anything else. Even folks like me or people who've been in other public service fields or have been studies on this, it is very difficult. So I don't want to go ahead without talking about the human cost of on-call. This is something that is difficult. The reason I liken this so much to my days in EMS and as I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of teams as I help them build their on-call programs or improve their incident response programs is that really I find that technical incident response is really a lot closer to sort of the ambulance model than you might think it is. And that really is because a lot of folks, when they say, "Oh, we have an incident response plan, we have, some sort of thing," it's often very big. It talks about what we're going to do when the world ends in Sev 0, and we're going to, it specifies that, you're going to update the CEO like with semaphore flags every 10 minutes, and it's like very specific on these things oftentimes, or there's nothing at all. But really. Most of our incidents are probably small. They're a small group of people. You know how I know that is because usually when I tell people that, there's a fraction of them in the audience that are going to be arguing with me in their heads about whether or not what they do constitutes an incident. So there you go. So that tells you that most of the time they're small. The problem is we don't know going into it which it is, right? Our pager goes off. Into the fray we go. This might be big, it might be small. I might return to sleep, I may not. So what I want to do is do what Dave said Richard would want to do, and leave you folks with something very practical today. Dave talked about how we have to have experience. We have to have experience to develop these expertise. We need to engage with our incidents. We need to have these things. We have to have a corpus of cases. Sarah and Alex talked about how useful that is to have this corpus of cases. But there are a lot of folks that I run into who don't feel like they can enter this world. They maybe show up to these conferences, they hear these things, they've read the SRE book, and it just feels unobtainable for them. And so for those folks, I want to have you walk away with what I see as sort of the minimum response plan that is going to help you grow and let you learn what works for you without having to kind of like second guess yourself all the way along. First though, what I'm not going to talk about. An incident response plan is not the entirety of an on-call program. I'm not really going to talk about how do you do your schedules, how do you compensate people. You should. I'm just going to leave it at that. You should. I'm going to talk about how do you respond to emergencies. I'm not going to talk to you about what severity things are, what's the difference between a Sev 1 and a Sev 2. I don't care. You shouldn't either. I'm not going to talk to you about whether or not it's important who exactly was there first, because ICS says that means they have the most knowledge, right? I don't, I've been at companies as an engineer, and I don't know half the services. The odds that because I got paged first, because I lost PagerDuty roulette, means somehow I have the most context, unlikely. Don't believe it. I'm not going to talk to you about software and tooling. You use IRC or HipChat or Slack or whatever. I don't care. You communicate with humans. You communicate with machines. you have to solve problems. That's what we're going to talk about. I'm not really going to talk about what exactly is and isn't an incident. If you need a level of coordination beyond what you normally might, probably fair to treat it as an incident, regardless of what you call it internally. Whether or not you have your incident metrics to game, I'm not going to get into. It doesn't matter whether it's an incident. And contrary to the title of the talk, I'm going to tell you don't need ICS. I will admit to tricking you a little bit. I put that in there because so many people say, oh, but ICS, right? This is the incident command system the government adopted. And really, incident response is the only thing I've ever seen. Like, when was the last time you're like, oh, the government does it, I should do it? Oh, I should use the same method of filing paperwork as the IRS. Oh, I should use the same customer service things as all these other government agencies. No. I don't know what it is about ICS. People love it because the government does it? No, you don't need ICS. Fun fact about ICS in the National Incident Management System, if you wanted to sit down and read it all, and you started with the question of how big is it, that's actually a trick question you can't possibly know because all the documents are circular dependencies. So it contains a lot of things you don't need to worry about, but what we're going to talk about today is going to be compatible as you decide or have some executive force you into needing ICS. If you start this way, you'll be fine. So the other question I get before we really get into this is, when do I start this? It's just me and a buddy. Good, then probably not. I don't know how much coordination you need to talk to one other human. I'm going to suggest it's probably not there. Could be as low as 5, 10. I've talked to folks who say, oh no, we're too small for this. I said, oh, interesting. How many are you? And they said, well, in engineering. I said, yeah, okay, engineering. I said, well, we're 40. Yeah, you're probably there. Really, if you feel a need for some other level of communication coordination, if you're in a pace of work that feels different than what you're normally doing, if you have that sort of pucker factor that goes, oh shit, this is different, you probably need, that's when you want to use this. I'm going to say that this is a seed. This is not the best way. This is not the only way. If I said best practice at a conference like this, I would be run out of town, and rightfully so. This is a seed that your organization, your team can grow and cultivate. As we heard other people stand up here and say, this is something that you can grow to where you're going. We've heard that idea. Tim was quoting Jessica when he said it, but he even gave the example of just sort of moving in the right direction and being more concerned about that than some sort of imagined idealized state. And that's what we're going to talk about. And no, I don't have a cool acronym for it. I call it the 3 hats method because I think that's easy. The trick of this is, if you are paged and there's no one else involved in the incident, you are currently wearing 3 hats, whether you know it or not. These 3 hats you're wearing are commander, incident manager, whatever you want to say. You're someone who is helping to keep coordination, helping to move people forward. You are also a liaison. You work with other parties, whether that's internal customers, external customers, customer support, however you divide up your organization. And then you're also someone who is bringing your expertise, whatever they are, to bear on this anomaly. Whether or not it's exactly your technical part of the system or not. You are wearing these 3 hats. Your job is, if you want to be the incident manager, is to get rid of 2 of these as fast as you can. That's it. It's like a board game. When whether you page other people, whether you work out a rotation for this, depending on the size of the incident, all those sorts of things, you want to either ask yourself, can I wear these 3 hats right now? Am I feeling good about this? Yeah, okay, maybe the pace is such that I can wear all these 3. That's fine, I'm okay with this. Maybe I try to do some, looking ahead, some prediction based on experience or whatever the case may be. I'm not sure I can. Maybe I do need to get someone in to help me, whether as an expert, because they perhaps know the system better, or man, I'm having a hard time keeping up with the pace. I need someone to talk to customer service for me. That's when you'll start to get other people in and get them doing those things. The reason I'm talking about this kind of at a small level is I want you to focus on the team, both as a unit and a place to start, perhaps your team. This allows you to start without organization-wide buy-in. Starting, I hate to break it to you, is the only way to get experience. No amount of sitting in rooms like this or reading papers is going to get you experience. Starting is the only way to do that. So I suggest that folks start with their team. The advantage to that is you don't have to ask for a lot of permission typically. Even if you feel the organization has some sort of plan, but perhaps it's not working for you, perhaps the plan only specifies things about severity or things about timing, you still can internally as a team decide on some norms and decide that we respond this way, and then when we engage other teams, we fill them in the way they're expected, or as Chad talked about, we do handoffs the way perhaps they're expected. This gives you the opportunity to understand some of those local optimizations we've heard about. These adaptations that are surely there. No matter whether or not you do have a response plan, if you've been working on this thing, this product, this service, this company, this team for very long, you certainly have some sort of adaptation. This lets you kind of understand them and begin to work around them. One of the reasons I want you folks to start early as possible is not just so that you can develop experience with those incidents and engage with them themselves. I want folks to engage with the process itself. I want folks to practice. We heard folks up here say, we would never take a junior engineer, give them the pager, and say good luck. Except we do it all the time in tech. Hey, you can write Java. Here's millions to billions of dollars worth of systems. You're on call. You've never been trained in emergency response. Good luck to you. We do it all the time, unfortunately, as an industry. So I want to have a system for you folks that you can practice. You're not done just because someone published it to Confluence. I don't care what their title is. Publishing it to Confluence is not practice. It does not help you actually execute the plan. You need time and space for that. That might be hard to do. I can't always help you with that one. If you're an organization that won't give you the time and space to practice, I'm hoping you're an organization who isn't surprised when it goes terribly. Practice can look like a lot of things. Could be, we've heard about some game days. I think we heard for some folks in Google in the next room, tabletop exercises, other forms of simulation. I will say that chances are, if you're here, you don't need to do chaos engineering. You may find value in designing the experiments, but I can always tell when I'm talking to folks who are very engineering-minded, and I tell them they need to practice, because they always look at me, and they go, oh, cool. So do I clone dev? Do I launch another pod? Do I do chaos experiments? I suggest you sit at a table and basically play a game. We had other talks about that, and I don't have the time today, but I will link you folks to a workshop that I've done to help you get started on that. So these are some of the resources that I'm going to leave you with. The first is just where you can find these slides. The second is that workshop I was telling you about. And the third, because look where we are, I have to leave you with a PDF, don't I? Like, I thought that was a rule. So there were some researchers, and they got together, and they're like, oh man, so we've been at this ICS thing since like, what, 2001? What if we went around the country and like asked responders about it and how they used it and how it worked? The answer is, you might be unsurprised to know, is that either A, it doesn't work, B, they don't do it, or C, they believe they do it and no two groups do it alike. So don't worry about any sort of formality. It's most important that you have the chance to build some of the common ground we've heard about, some of the practices, some of the experience in working with your team through these incidents. Obviously, this is a difficult, large subject. Happy to answer questions afterwards, or you can tell me how your company is so different and so special that these practices just will not work for you. I promise I will listen. Thank you.